Well, somehow, some way, I think the Miami Dolphins actually lost their bye week. They didn't play. And we talked about what Miami needed to happen to have their playoff chances take a bump up going into week 13 when they play the Saints at home. But everything they needed to get back in the playoff hunt and raise those chances literally went against them. Which, by the way, is why you subscribe to the channel, because if you don't know what we're talking about, we put out a whole video on Saturday labeling and listing what Miami needs to happen, not only this weekend, but for the rest of the year if they wanted to make the playoffs in a miracle come back type of season. So make sure you do subscribe so you don't miss our content. But if you were not watching that video, I'll fill you in. The two biggest things Miami needed this weekend was for the Colts, who were the second best record in the AFC coming into the week, to beat the Chiefs on the road. And number two, you needed a little bit of an upset where the Arizona Cardinals beat the Jaguars at home. Well, what happened? The Chiefs won 23-20 in overtime, and the Jaguars beat the Cardinals 27-24. So both results you desperately needed went against you. And if you even go back to Thursday Night Football entering the week, you needed the Texans to lose to the Bills. Well, the Bills lost to the Texans, so now the Texans are 6-5. And the one part that is the most painful and really just feels like someone stabbed you in the stomach, but like didn't just stab you and take it out. They stabbed you and like they twisted it around to get all the organs on that blade. Because not only did both the teams win, they both came from behind to win in overtime. The Chiefs were down 20-9 in the fourth quarter and ultimately forced OT and won that game because the Colts were dumbasses and took the ball first in overtime. Shane Steichen, what are you doing? Did you not know each team gets the ball? Dumb football. And then the Cardinals, they were up in that game. Jaguars retake the lead, and then Jacoby Brissett leads them down the football field in the final minute, and they get the ball to the 10-yard line with about 25 seconds left in regulation, down 3. And instead of spiking it to give them a couple chances to throw the end zone, they do one play to throw to the end zone. And guess what happens? Incomplete with 7 seconds left, and they kick the field goal to OT, and then they lose. Like, I would argue with where they were, the Cardinals should have won that game, and the Colts leading by 11, 10 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, they should have won. So we should be sitting here in a much better spot to make the playoffs, but instead, the Jaguars came back, and so did the Chiefs. So, we all knew, though, that Miami needed to win out to make the playoffs. So, if they won out going into the week, they were going to be at a 35% chance to make the playoffs. After all the events that happened this week, it is at 22%. So you went down 13% by not even playing. And it's because you saw teams like Houston, Kansas City win this week to improve to 6-5. The Jaguars winning improves them to 7-4. So now you have all three wildcard teams sitting at 7-4, and you've actually got the Buffalo Bills sitting at the 7th seed in the wildcard race. Absolute wild stuff in the AFC, but it just makes it incredibly more difficult for Miami to make the playoffs because it's all bunched up, and now there are just so many teams that can ultimately get in the postseason with all of the tie-breaking scenarios. Pin comment on today's show. Are you still rooting for the Miami Dolphins to make the playoffs? It's going to be incredibly difficult to make the postseason going forward after the events of this week, but let me know your thoughts. Y for yes or N for no. I think it was incredibly difficult because of the Dolphins' schedule either way. Coming out of the bye week, they get to play the Saints, who are horrific, and the Jets, who actually put up a pretty good fight against the Ravens this Sunday. But you got two teams picking in the top 5 right now that if you win, you could go to 6-7. But then you play the Steelers in Pittsburgh on Monday night. The Steelers, they're beatable. But then the Bengals, Buccaneers, and Patriots, very unlikely you ultimately win all 6 of these games and go to 10-7. But even if you do, because of the events of this weekend, it is incredibly unlikely. Think about that. If the Dolphins won out to finish the year 10-7, they have a 22% chance to make the playoffs. That is incredibly low for a team to get to 10 wins and have a 22% chance to make the playoffs. So it's not looking good, man. It really isn't, which is why I think the Dolphins literally lost their bye week. But if you're on the other end of the spectrum, there is a little bit of good news because Miami actually went up in the NFL draft standings. They went from number 11 to number 10. So they move up one spot there. But another interesting thing here is that a lot of teams are starting to win some games. You saw the Cleveland Browns get the 3-8. The Giants are much better than the 2-10 record says. I feel like they'll get one, maybe two more wins the rest of the way, especially with a little bit of an easier schedule ahead of them, I believe. I mean, they've had a murderer's row as of late. They do play the Patriots this upcoming Monday night at home. I think the Giants might win that game, by the way. But if you're the Miami Dolphins, the next two games determine a lot, right? When you look at those NFL draft standings, the order, you play two teams picking inside the top five, the New York Jets and the New Orleans Saints. So if the Dolphins go out and beat both of those teams, they basically cement that they will not be picking inside the top, let's say 7, because they'll have at minimum 6 wins on the year. But if you split those games, if you somehow lose both of those games, well, then you lose to two of the worst teams in football. You're 4-9 or 5-8, and you could be picking anywhere between 5 and 10 now in the NFL draft in April, which is what some fans might want ultimately because the chances of making the playoffs are so extremely low. More coming up here, but this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's the holiday season, the best time of the year for sports. Bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it's all happening at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, what game to watch, there's one place where it feels to be good, to be right, and that is PrizePicks. It's been so fun to start playing this season and beyond. I've been playing for a long time. I really like the injury reboots feature because you never want to lose because your guy got injured. And there is a new feature alert, by the way, on PrizePicks. Early payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. If your fantasy football season is over, you can get in on the action and make the action on weekends so much more exciting with PrizePicks. My entry for today's game in Monday Night Football, more than Christian McCaffrey receiving yards and more than Tat McMillan touchdowns. That's my lineup. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Even though I don't feel very confident in the Dolphins' chances to continue to win games and make the playoffs, maybe the Dolphins are feeling confident. We saw just 2 weeks ago a report come out from Cameron Wolfe that Bradley Chubb told him the Dolphins locker room is feeling delusional in terms of their chances to keep on rattling off wins and maybe make a playoff push. Well, Devon Achane joined Dolphins legend Teron Armstead on his podcast/YouTube show, The Set, and he dropped this incredible line that I wanted to dissect a little bit. Achane said out of the 7 losses Miami has had, 2 of those games we actually got beat. The other ones, it was just us making mistakes. So I thought back and I was like, how true is this statement from Achane? And I gotta be honest, he's not wrong. Now, maybe I'll disagree in one game particularly, but for the most part, all of the Dolphins' losses, at least to say half of them, they should have won. Let's look at the 4 that I think without a question you could argue Miami beat themselves in. Their second loss in week 2 against the Patriots, they end up taking the lead in the fourth quarter, and then on the ensuing kick return, they give up a touchdown and they take the lead. And then Tua had 2 straight chances to deliver a game-winning touchdown drive, and he ends up throwing an interception and turnover on downs. That's a game they very easily could have won. The Bills game, you were tied at 21 with 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, getting the ball back. But Zach Sealer roughs the punter, gives the Bills the first down. Then Tua throws an interception with under 2 minutes to go. Ball game. Week 5 against Carolina, you went up 17-0 and then absolutely fell flat on your face, lost that game late. Could have won, but Tua didn't get the job done on the final game-winning drive after putting Miami up late in the fourth quarter, and then the defense gave it right back up. And then we know the story against the Chargers game, the one that was incredibly frustrating, where you were up You played a really good first half, but you had the worst third quarter all season, and you give up 17 unanswered points and ultimately lose that game. Like, I'm not saying Miami should win all 4 of these because you're naturally going to have some of those close games go against you. But if you just went 2-2 in those games, which I think with a better head coach than Mike McDaniel and a better quarterback, because Tua did have a lot of shortcomings in those 4 games, if you just go 2-2 in those 4 games we just mentioned, you're sitting at 6-5 right now, just like the Chiefs, just like the Texans, and you would have a chance to win a couple games against the Saints and Jets to go to 8-5 and set yourselves up for a really good chance to make the playoffs. That's why those games early on in the year were so incredibly frustrating. Those 4 could have easily swung to Miami. I think the 3 games that they never really had a chance in, the game against the Colts, they got blown off right away. They got crushed by the Browns, although they did have a lot of self-inflicted wounds. They got blown out, so it's not like I'm going to say they could have won that game. And then the game against the Ravens. Yes, they outplayed them in the first half and shot themselves in the foot, self-inflicted wounds, but they were just outplayed in the entire second half. So I think those 4 games, you go 2-2 instead of 0-4, and you're probably in a driver's seat potentially to make the playoffs. And it just all goes down to the coaching, and it's why I was so frustrated with Mike McDaniel through the first 2 months of the year and wanted him fired, because I think a good head coach has those games at 2-2 rather than 0-4. But, I mean, it's hard to knock McDaniel because the Dolphins team has won 3 of their last 4 games and a lot of positivity around him right now, man. Like, the players are still playing hard. And one of the biggest players that have been a revelation lately is Jack Jones. And you see this tweet from the Finstones. Well, Jack Jones quote tweeted it and said genius. Like, it just goes back to the point that although I would still fire Mike McDaniel because I don't think he's going to be able to give you a winning, consistent locker room and a consistent Super Bowl contender, it is so clear that the players in the past, the current players, all enjoy playing for him. Now, some maybe do not, and there are always going to be some of those apples in the orchard that don't ultimately like playing for him, but the majority do. Like, just look at Deebo Samuel in that viral clip that came out of them 2 reuniting prior to the Commanders-Dolphins game in Madrid. They were together in San Francisco, and Deebo and McDaniel looked like they were best friends since birth. Like, that is how good of a relationship McDaniel has with them. And it's how good of a relationship he has with the majority of the players, which is why the locker room's still playing hard, why maybe Stephen Ross doesn't want to get rid of him. Now, would I, in terms of trying to get a legit Super Bowl potential winning head coach in the building? Yes, I would. But it's clear a lot of these Dolphins players still like him and want to play hard for him. Well, we'll be here every step of the way between now and the end of the season to see if Miami could ultimately make a playoff push. But it didn't really go so well this weekend for Miami when they were on bye. We'll have more videos out this week, so hit that sub button.